Primal Desire by ButstheSlackGordsman. I won't eat you, I promise. The words on the computer screen reflected in Jesse's eyes. His stomach lifted as if in an elevator. His chest constricted to the point where he wasn't sure if he could breathe the next breath. He never thought he could be so lucky as to find the one. With shaky fingers, he typed on the keyboard, daring not to raise his hopes any higher. You said you were with a guy before. What about him? He almost forgot to breathe as he waited for Lily's response. It was funny. They had been chatting online for months to the point where they practically knew everything about each other, yet this one thing was what he anticipated most of all to know. The icon changed from a scene icon and then to a typing icon. Jesse's heart jumped in his throat. I let him go without hurting him. I can control it. I'm not like the other girls. See you tonight? Jesse was so elated he felt like he was floating. His arms felt detached from his body as he typed back. Yes, baby. Just gotta wait for my mum to go to sleep. Jesse pushed away from his desk in ecstasy. What were the odds? He remembered in sexual defense class that the odds of finding a woman who wouldn't eat you were less than 1 in a million. Yet here she was, only a couple of blocks from his house. His jubilation was interrupted by a sharp voice behind him. What are you doing? Jesse's heart plummeted from his throat all the way to his stomach as he hurriedly tried to close the chat window on his computer screen, but it was no use. His mum made the distance from his door to the computer desk in a single, powerful bound and clutched his hand painfully. There was no escaping her iron grip. He could only look down as she read his chat logs. Jesse tensed his body as she read, prepared for the explosion of anger. Instead, he was shocked to see tears glossing over her brown eyes. Her lined face seemed to age 10 years as she looked from the screen back to Jesse. No, Jesse, not yet. I can't lose you yet, she whispered in a voice thick with sorrow. But Mum, she says she's not like the other girls. It will be safe, I promise. Now came the explosion. That's what they all say, his mum roared. The tenderness in her face was reforged into the angry expression he was used to. She slammed the laptop screen down. As she let go of the laptop, Jessie saw the top was indented where her fingers once were. That's it. I've put this day off long enough. Your time has come. Tomorrow morning, I'm turning you into the sanctuary, she growled. The sanctuary? Whatever was left of Jesse's heart melted inside him. The fear of the accursed breed tank put a backbone into Jesse. I don't want to go to the sanctuary, he shouted back at her. He'd read the forum posts from those inside. Sure, the woman portrayed it as a place for men to live safely, but it was really just a breeding farm. Why should I go? To be bred like cattle? So you can live, she yelled back. Her eyes almost gave her a demented look about her. You know that as a young man, you have a responsibility for mankind. The indignity of the situation caused his chest to seethe with anger, so much so he pushed his luck. Is that what you told Dad before you fucking ate him? Smack. Her strike rocketed him off his roller chair and onto the ground. The metallic taste of blood filled Jesse's mouth as something hard rattled in his mouth. Fishing it out with his tongue, he spat out a tooth. His mother's once hard face broke into concern. She bent down to Jesse and helped him up. Her grip was soft and tender this time around, and the tears fell thickly on her face once again. Jesse knew her violence was due to the flux in her adrenal glands, but he recoiled at her touch all the same. She held him, her body racked with sobs. My boy, I can't lose my boy, she whimpered. Jesse, sensing his mum was fully back, put his arms around her. Don't worry, Mum. I'll go to the sanctuary, he murmured. She broke away from him and gave him a tearful nod. She kissed his forehead, bade him a good night, and closed the door to his bedroom. Once the door was closed, Jesse opened the same chat window on his phone. "I'm on my way now." He hesitated. "Fuck it. Now or never. I love you." The light from the full moon glimmered in his window as he quietly slid it open. Taking care not to make a noise, he tiptoed his way out of the window and onto the lawn. The neighbourhood was typically suburban, with nice lawns and lit sidewalks. Though Lily was only a couple of blocks away, Jesse felt his hairs stand up on end. Men weren't allowed outside by themselves. He'd have to stay out of the light from the street lamps. The things he did for love. He set off down the street, down to the corner of the first block, taking care to stay close to the sidewalk, but out of the light. The windows in each house he passed felt like eyes watching him. He knew he stuck out like a sore thumb. At any time a woman could look out her window and report him. His brief escapade into stealth was shattered by the moment he tried to cross the street. Flashing blue and red lights illuminated Jesse like a kaleidoscope as a patrol van burst from the shadows. Jesse froze where he stood with his hands up. There was no running from the patrol van, nor the woman driving it. A shadow stepped out of the patrol van, contrasting with the siren lights. The lights shut off, but the imprint of them were burned into his eyes. As he squinted, he made out the figure of a tall brunette woman. She was youthful and grinning broadly, with a mouth slightly too large for comfort, as if she were itching to take a bite out of him. "Well, well, well. Where were we off to tonight, Romeo?" Her sing-song voice was tuned in a teasing manner. Jesse knew that there was no use lying. There was only one reason men were caught by themselves. She said she's not like the others. She can control it," he stammered, cringing at how stupid the words sounded coming out. The officer let out a snort of laughter. "Jesus fucking Christ, that's what they all say. Shit, that's what I said to the last guy, and you dumb fucks eat it up every single time. You idiots almost deserve what you get." Jesse's cheeks burned with shame and indignation. She was wrong. Lily was different. The officer seemed to sense what he was thinking. She motioned for him to follow her. "Come here, kid. Let me show you what happened to the last guy who fell in love." He followed her to the back of the van and opened it up with a creak. Lying in the bed was a black body bag. Rather than a single lump indicating a body, it had lumps perforated all over it. "Cover your nose, kid," she warned as she unzipped the bag. Acidic bile burned Jesse's throat as he vomited in disgust. There wasn't a body in the bag. In fact, there was nothing recognizable. Inside was a pinkish paste with bits of bone jutting out at random locations. A single eyeball floated in the mess and stared at him. "I'm telling you now, kid, once she locks eyes on you, there's no turning back. Once those pheromones mix with the adrenal glands." She inhaled deeply through her nose and tipped her head back. She let out a long, shuddering exhale. "God, there's no fucking rush like it." She looked down at him. Her once human face was contorted into something else entirely. Her mouth, already big enough, stretched even larger, revealing rows of sharpening teeth. Her pupils dilated to the point in which her irises were nearly engulfed. Her breathing grew rapid, with a wild edge in each lengthening exhale as thick veins wriggled their way across her forearms. Jesse's phone went off in his pocket, seeming to snap the officer out of it. Her features went back to normal as she let out a small laugh. No, it's better for nice young boys to go to the sanctuary." Jesse gave her a shaky nod. He'd never seen what was left from a mating up close before. The eye staring at him was burned into his psyche. What the hell was he thinking? He needed to just go back home. The officer offered him a ride home, to which he accepted, not sure if she'd even allow him to refuse. She asked for his address as she got behind the wheel. Being around her made him nervous, and he'd already lost his bearings, having never been outside before. He had to look up the address in his phone. As he pulled it out, he saw Lily was the one who messaged him. "I love you too." Jesse's heart felt like it would burn its way through his chest. Everything that just happened, all his resolve, melted away like the morning frost gives way to sunlight. Lily was the only thing that mattered. He immediately scrolled up in the chat window and gave the officer Lily's address instead of his own. The officer cruised down the street with Jesse, trying to contain his shaking. His crazy plan was going to work. She had to be different. He'd gone through so much. She had to be the one. Lily really did only live a couple of blocks away. The patrol van came to a soft halt as Jesse looked out the window to his soulmate's house. It was a modest one-story house with a neat, well-kept lawn. The windows were dark, but he could see a shaft of light through the drawn curtains. Lily. "Well, get out," the officer snapped at him as her radio went off. "Breaker, 1090, we've got another runner from the sanctuary." Jesse's mouth went bone dry as he opened the door and stepped out. The siren lights of the van flickered back on and it sped off into the night, leaving Jesse barely illuminated by the edge of a streetlight. He breathed heavily as he faced the house. He'd never thought he'd get this far. The surrealness of the situation made him lightheaded. Did he just knock? He tried to will his legs to move, but they were leaden. Heart pounding in his chest, he brought out his phone. "I'm here." His heart nearly stopped as there was an immediate scene icon. The curtains drew back and he saw a small figure looking at him. He mustered up all his strength and made his legs move to the door. There was a clack and the door creaked open, revealing Lily. He'd never seen a woman his age before. She was about 6 inches shorter than him, with long, dirty blonde hair that nearly touched her waist. Everything about her screamed delicate. Her large eyes, small, pointed nose, heart-shaped face fit her small frame perfectly. There was no way someone so small could hurt him. For the first time, he felt no fear looking at a woman. Her mouth split into a smile. Not the crazed smile he saw in the officer, but a sweet smile with genuine happiness. "Hi, I'm Lily," she said in a high-pitched voice. Jesse stood there smiling like an idiot. I'm Jesse," he stammered. He reached out to shake her hand, but something stopped him right before they touched. That eye. That damn eye imprinted in his mind flashed until it was all he could see. Like a dam, all the memories of the previous hour flooded his mind. He took a step back, eyeing her warily. Lily was taken aback, as if she sensed his thoughts. She sniffed as tears formed in her eyes. I'm not a monster," she said in a small voice looking down. To his horror, her thin shoulders started to shake as she cried. All his apprehension melted away as he reached out to grab her hand. The moment he touched her hand, it was over. They both stared deeply into each other's eyes as the pheromones took over both of them. This time, Lily sprang back, blood draining from her face. "You have to stay away from me, Jesse. You're not like the other guy. I can't control myself around you." She couldn't finish her sentence as her eyes glazed over. Jesse's mind was hazy with a fog so thick he couldn't parse a thought. All that mattered was Lily. He walked towards her as she walked towards him, both under each other's spell. It didn't matter that she broke his wrist as she gripped it. All that mattered was Lily. It didn't matter that she effortlessly threw him into her house, dislocating her shoulder. Only Lily. The blood dribbling from his mouth didn't matter as he got back up, ignoring the pain. Lily. She closed the door behind her and was immediately upon him. She held him so tightly against her, he felt as if they would fuse into one. so be it. As the mating began, all essence of Jessie was stripped away, replaced by a primal desire, an intense, lustful need that had to be quenched. Everything Jessie ever was, all his emotions, his hopes, his dreams, were condensed into a singular point that felt fit to burst. As Jessie felt it burst, an electric sensation pulsed throughout his body as he felt the most indescribable pleasure in his life. In that moment he knew the meaning of life. This sensation was the only truth. Jessie jolted back to reality. His entire arm up to his shoulder was aflame in agony. His entirely naked body was weak, so weak that he could barely muster up the strength to move even if his arm wasn't broken. A low, guttural roar above him caused him to look up. Lily was seated upon him. Her eyes were rolled upwards into her head, and her mouth was opening. It opened wider and wider, stretching past human proportions. There was a sickening pop as her jaw dislocated and continued to open. Jessie's weakened heart pounded as hard as it could. He knew what was happening, the transformation. His mind vaguely remembered that the only chance men had to survive a mating was to escape while the woman went through her first transformation. He struggled into an upright sitting position. Lily's veins all over were wriggling like worms under her skin, and her body started to spasm. Letting out panicked breaths, Jessie tried to roll out from under her, but he rolled onto his broken arm. Blades of fiery pain ran all along his arm as he screamed out. He put a hand to his mouth. The guttural noises stopped. Time almost seemed to stop as he drew his gaze to her. Her eyes were completely black and locked onto his. Her mouth hung open almost halfway down her neck, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth that were still lengthening. Her hands gripped his shoulders painfully, holding him down. With no escape, Jessie had only one fantastical hope. Maybe she was still in there somewhere. He reached out a hand and gently grazed her cheek, trying not to recoil at how hard and muscular it felt now. "Lily," he whispered. To his surprise, he felt her hand release his shoulder and gently stroke his cheek. Tears flowed from her abyssal eyes as she looked deep into his eyes. He knew it. She was different from the other girls. The cure to survival was true love. Lily grabbed Jessie's jaw in each hand and sank her teeth into Jessie's throat. The rows of teeth cut through his flesh like a hot knife through butter. Yanking her head back, she tore out the entirety of his throat. Jessie fell back to the ground in a shower of his own blood. The last thing he saw was Lily plunging both of her fists through his chest. The last thing he felt was her clawed hands digging through his chest to find his heart. With a squeeze of her fist, Jessie's heart was broken for the last time. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," Lily chanted over and over again at what was left of Jessie. If she squinted hard enough, his dislocated eyeball seemed to give her a forgiving look. The entirety of Jessie's torso was hollowed out and inside Lily now. Lily bitterly cursed herself. Not like the other girls. So stupid. She learned that before women took on their first transformation, they could delude themselves into thinking that they could never eat a man. But it was only that, a delusion. Once the first transformation took hold, they became beholden to their inescapable desires. And Lily was no different. Taking out her phone, she messaged the man she had let go. Realizing to herself she'd only let him go to save him for later, she texted, "I won't eat you. I promise." I just want to thank ButstheSlackGordsman for allowing me to narrate this story. If you liked what you heard here, make sure you head over to their page and show them some love. I'll leave a link for that in the description below. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, and as always, stay tuned for one more nightmare.